and CJ with King.
You want to go get a hot dog at halftime? Well, guess what? You can also take the under in the second half of 25. You know what I mean?
And CJ.
You can win Super Bowls right now with me and Grandpa Brady over here. Let's do it that way.
Presented by the fine students and faculty of the Oklahoma State University School of Media and Strategic Communications in beautiful Paul Miller Building. Broadcast live on KXCY OSU Student Radio. And now, live from Studio 318, it's Border Battle with Jordan the Great King and CJ the Viking Notch.
Welcome back in here to Studio 318 here in Paul Miller Building. Hope you had a great weekend. You're listening to the Border Battle with King and CJ. I'm King, he's CJ. Chris, how was your weekend to start off here?
It was fantastic. I got to watch a bunch of OSU athletic teams win and had a great time just hanging out in JB like always.
Yeah, good stuff. We live here, Chris. We really do.
We really do.
That's how we'll start off the day. You can listen to us if you're curious on Sudden Link Channel 112, YouTube Live. That's Border Battle On Demand if you're looking for that. Facebook.com/Border Battle Show as well if you're looking for a Facebook feed or OSU Student Radio KXZY. We're on there as well. So plenty of different ways you can connect with us. If you got some thoughts, send them on Facebook, send them on YouTube. We'll see if we can get them and maybe answer them. We'll see.
Or Twitter, too. They can reach out.
Twitter, yeah, that's Border Battle OSU on Twitter. So at Border Battle OSU if you want to reach out on that. Chris, let's get started here right away. Yesterday, something that's new they started with the NCAA is the committee now releases some pre-tournament top 16 seeds. Right, so you get the top 16 seeds, the top 4 seeds in each region they release, and then they go from there. That's all they release, and then each time they'll update it each week, whatever it is. So this was the first one being released yesterday, and what message did it send? Because each of these is sending a message, right? What message did it send?
Like with the whole thing overall of them doing it?
Yeah. What message did these rankings send?
I think if anything, it shows that what happened this weekend, they didn't really take all that much into account, especially like when you look at they still have Virginia as number 1 seed, which I still believe they are. I think part of it too is because with this whole top 25 rankings thing, they feel things will change. But if anything, it just kind of shows it gives teams different edges in a sense because it's if anything, it's more fuel to the fire for some of these teams. They're like, oh, I feel I'm better maybe than what seed I was given, better than that. But I like that they do this. I think it kind of, even for people that love to do the brackets, it gives them time to kind of really start thinking because March will be here and March Madness starts before we know it.
I know this isn't locked in and this isn't the last one and this will all change, but this is the most pathetic set of rankings I think this committee's released in this top 16 era since they've started doing this. This is the most pathetic one. Because you're undervaluing the Big Ten. How Michigan State is a 3 seed in this, I have no idea. A lot of people are voting them. I just looked at an AP voter who publishes what his exact votes are, not the whole AP, but he's an AP voter. He has Michigan State the number one in the nation in the new AP poll, and they're a 3 seed. So you're saying at the very best they're the 9th team in the country. Well, that's what you're saying.
Well, see, but I guess what I'm seeing.
So they're better than Duke, who just lost to St. John's. They're better than Auburn, who plays in a weaker SEC.
Do I think Michigan State is?
Yeah.
Yeah?
They're weaker than both those teams.
Oh, I wouldn't say they're weaker.
Well, that's what this poll is saying. They're weaker than both those teams. Yeah. Are they weaker than Kansas?
Well, no. Obviously not. But at the same time, then do you look at Kansas as, some of these things, do they look as Kansas is always up there, it's because of their coach, does part of the shadow because of what's happened to the Michigan State program? Is that maybe part of it? Like this committee?
Well, but then
I know they're supposed to do have talent and stuff, but is the committee going?
No.
Well,
that's not the committee's job. The committee's job is not to take into account what's happening off the court. It's to take into account who is the best 16 teams in the country and rank them. And in my opinion, they've got it wrong. A team that's going to be the number 1 seed. I don't mind if you put them behind Purdue because a lot of this was made before yesterday, so you're not going to – I understand that. I get that. And it was a close game too, and Michigan State was at home. So if you still believe Purdue's better than Michigan State, fine. But you're not going to be able to sell me that some of these teams are better than Michigan State. Even Xavier, I have a hard time believing.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could be devil's advocate and really argue with you, but at the same time, I totally agree that a lot of these teams are inconsistent. Kansas inconsistent, Duke inconsistent. I think if anything with some of these teams like Xavier, even Cincinnati, you don't hear a lot about them. Heck, Xavier only won off late free throws against Creighton. So, I don't know. I'm probably just a loss of words as you are.
Well, and then you have number 21 in the AP poll is North Carolina. They come in as a 3 seed on this. Now, I believe they're the weakest 3 seed per how they have this ranked. But still, how is North Carolina a 3 seed? I get the ACC is a strong conference. Is it that much stronger than the Big 12 though? Because West Virginia is right ahead of them. How are they not in this if North Carolina is in this?
Right. I don't know. See, I still think the ACC has more top tiered challengers than I think the Big 12, because all the top people, West V, Texas Tech, Kansas, and Oklahoma, they've all had these inconsistencies right now. That North Carolina hasn't. They've had their ups and downs just as much, but I mean the ACC as a whole is pretty stacked. At least on the top end.
Okay, so I guess the way I value this is I'm not saying Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Kansas are not as good. I'm saying the rest of the Big 12 is just solid, and it's a tough place to go play. It's a tough game.
There's a lot of parity.
Every game you play in the Big 12, you could lose.
Right.
Iowa State is not a pushover anymore, especially when you go up and play in Ames. So I don't quite understand how North Carolina fits into this. I understand if you want to put them in as a 4 seed, that's only jumping them up 5 spots, but this is jumping them up at least 10 spots, 9 spots. Right. So I have no idea how North Carolina fits in as a 3 seed. I think you're probably being a little generous to Oklahoma putting them as a 4, but you look at their body of work and some of the wins they have, you have to put them in there, I think. Ohio State, that's another team that maybe got pushed down a few spots that I didn't think deserved it. And then you have the Pac-12 question of, where is the Pac-12? Because Arizona comes in as the worst 4 seed, I believe, in the whole thing, unless I got this mixed up. So where does the Pac-12? We were listening to Bill Walton, who seems to think 9 Pac-12 teams are going to get into the tournament, which is tells you a lot about Bill Walton and what he thinks of the big Pac-12. I don't think there's any way they get more than 4 or 5 teams in there. So where do you see the Pac-12 fitting into this discussion?
Kind of like what you were going off of. You sneak Arizona in, but is it just to give the Pac-12 somebody to have in there? Because watching, even when we watched the Arizona game, I know this weekend I had them on a little bit. I don't know. The Pac-12 it's the weakest conference out of the Power 5 right now. For the teams that are in this, the top 4 seeds right now, I don't know. It's like you said. Why did they have them there? I don't know.
Do you think it is weaker top to bottom than the Big Ten?
Ooh, yeah, I don't know. I would say so. They're very close. I think maybe Big Ten has a little more of an edge because their top teams are better and more consistent than Pac-12s right now. But as a whole, they're still both pretty close.
Yeah. So here's my thing with the Big Ten, because I know a lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, can you say that Michigan State's a great team? How can you compare the Big Ten to the ACC, say? And I'm not trying to compare the Big Ten against the ACC, but you look at Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, I understand they don't always have to play the best teams week after week, which there's something to be said about doing that. But have they lost? They've went out and taken care of business, especially Purdue and Ohio State. Michigan State, yeah, they've had their struggles against certain teams. Most of them have been on the road. But you look at Purdue and Ohio State especially. They've taken care of every test you've asked of them so far. They've taken care of all of them. And Purdue played pretty darn good basketball going to the I-Zone too. So you Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State, I understand the whole of the Big Ten argument. I understand that. I just don't buy it as much as people are saying.
Right. And I can see that too, because I see actually in the South, they have Duke projected as a 2, Michigan State as a 3. Maybe they get that edge because Duke beat Michigan State the first game of the season. I know that's early, and that was before, the teams, like have gotten to where they are now. But unless they give them a tiebreaker thing, you know what, Duke actually beat Michigan State, so we'll put them up ahead.
Yeah, but like my only counter argument to that is, how do you put Duke in there with the recent
slide that they're on?
They lost to St. John's. So now are we going to all of a sudden, because St. John's beat Villanova, are we just going to say they're a quality team now? They're an inconsistent team. Are they good?
Right.
Do they have a ton of talent? Absolutely. But they're inconsistent. So you can't just automatically say that they're a quality team just because they beat 2 top 4 teams. That's not how this works. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I really have a problem with Duke. I think Texas Tech should be higher. I think there's a lack of respect for Texas Tech in here. Like, Oklahoma and Kansas got a bump up from the committee. Texas Tech didn't. It got a bump down. Right. And you look at what Texas Tech has been able to do. They've fended off the teams. By the way, you look, when Oklahoma State went to West Virginia, what happened? They won. When Oklahoma State went to Fog Allen, what happened? They won. Texas Tech was able to stave off Oklahoma State coming to Lubbock. Now, Oklahoma State should have won that game.
Right.
But still, they still won it. Texas Tech was able to come out in the second half, play well enough to win. So I guess the only conference that I think is a big question mark right now is the SEC. Do you see the SEC as a premier conference, or do we overvalue it now that Kentucky is struggling and a lot of these teams are beating Kentucky? You know, Kentucky a 3-game slide now.
I think it's more overvalued now because I think the thing is, at the same point with the SEC, Kentucky was consistently the past, 6-7 years, I think it was, that, Kentucky was always right at the top of the picture. Now they're just as bad with consistency as, teams like Duke and some of these other teams that are in here. So I think it takes away when you don't have, Kentucky there consistently. I think people kind of tend to look away from the SEC because all they ever think of is Kentucky this, Kentucky that. When you actually have, like, Florida's a very good team. You have some of these other good teams.
The 2 that make it in here, Tennessee and Auburn, I'm okay with putting them both in here. I think Auburn's a little high. I think you maybe undervalued Tennessee a little bit. But I think both those teams could be dangerous come tournament time.
Yeah, like I said, it's just hard to say. I want to ask you quick, with these 16 teams that they have right here for these top ones, is there a team that you feel should be in there over, like, a different one in there?
Like a team that got left out altogether?
Like, is there a team that you feel should be in a top 4 seed over one of those?
Like I said, you look at the biggest team that jumps to mind for me is West Virginia, but again, they're an inconsistent team, pardon me. So I'm okay leaving West Virginia out, but if you're going to leave them out, why are you putting North Carolina in? That's the question. Right. When I look at this, I just see I struggle to see any sort of consistency here with this committee, which is something we always ask for, is not get everything right. It's be consistent with your criteria.
Right.
And they're not here. They just aren't.
Well, and I think a funny thing, though, too, not only is the committee inconsistent, but 3/4 of this whole league for all the basketball teams are inconsistent as well. Like, there's very few teams that have been consistently coming in and out day to day and dominating the games they should and all that. Most, look at probably half these teams in this, top 16 here are inconsistent.
Right. Real quick for you, I wanted to ask you specifically, any problem with leaving St. Mary's and Gonzaga out altogether, currently the 11th and 12th in the AP poll?
I don't have a problem with it just because of the conference they're in. I think it's the Mountain West. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's their conference.
West Coast Conference.
West Coast. Because, what big wins do they have? I mean, those 2 are the top teams in their, in the respective conference there. But if that's all you have, what do you... they have nothing else to show for it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think you're all right to leave them out. It's just, it's I know the AP poll is not the committee. I understand that, but you also have to work. There is a certain value you have to be putting to the people that watch college basketball, write on it, and then vote on it. So you have to put value in all of that stuff as well. So I think that's important to consider. Well, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, after this calamity, I called for change in the United States Soccer Federation. Did they do enough? I'm going to tell you next. Plus, stick around later. Wade Haugen joins the show to talk Cowgirl softball's opening weekend. This is the Border Battle on OSU Student Radio, KXZY. Welcome back into Studio 318 here in Paul Miller Journalism Building at Oklahoma State University. You're listening to the Border Battle on OSU Student Radio KXCY. Again, you can catch us on Suddenlink Channel 112, YouTube.com, that's the Border Battle on Demand, or Facebook.com/Border Battle Show. Chris, we come back here. We had an election this weekend.
Well, why don't you get not only myself, but the rest of our viewers caught up on what went down?
So for those of you who are not big United States soccer fans, the highlights we showed there, we just saw a couple goals from Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, that's a country, in case you were wondering. How you lose to Trinidad and Tobago is beyond me. You needed a tie. You needed a draw. You needed what probably 99% of people would have picked as the result, at least a draw. And you can't do it. So it brings about change, right? And it should. We missed the World Cup. This is a country that should be... I'm on record saying this is a country that should not just be getting 2 World Cups. We should be competing for World Cup championships. And I know a lot of people are going to scoff at that and say, we're the United States of America. We shouldn't be competing for championships. Yes, we should. We should be competing for World Cup championships. So I was one of them that was clamoring for a bunch of change. I wanted change. Well, we had an election, as I said. And the United States Soccer Federation did not create enough change, in my opinion. And now it's not necessarily hedging it, because I don't believe in always hedging what I say. You know that, of all people. I don't think that Carlos Cordero is the right person. I don't think anyone in the establishment is the right person. So by the establishment, I mean someone who is an inside person. What is the one thing we've always criticized about soccer, about the U.S. Soccer Federation, about FIFA? Being transparent. That's the first thing. We see the results here. Cordero runs away with it, 68.6%. I kind of wanted Eric Winalda. I'm not going to lie to you. Eric Winalda, Caio Martino, former players, know the game, outsiders. I don't think Hope Solo had much of a chance. I think she had some good points, equality between the two teams, stuff like that. I think there's certain things that she brought to the table that were, in a certain way, I don't know what the right word is for it, but they were useful. Let's use that word. I think that's probably not fair to her, but they were useful. They go with an establishment candidate, and he's got a lot of pressure on him now. I'm reading an article on ESPN.com. Let me pull it up. Jeff Carlisle, who's a big ESPN national soccer writer, he wrote, he needs to follow through with the stated aim of creating a technical department to manage on-field matters. Why? Because he's a businessman. This guy is not a soccer guy. He's a businessman. It's great. Do we need a business part of this federation? Absolutely. Absolutely you need it. Do you need him running it? I don't know. Did I want a soccer guy to run this and then you delegate the stuff that you don't know to different departments? Yes. So it's unfair for me to say if we elect a business guy and he's willing to delegate that part, fine. That would be hypocritical for me to say that that's not right. So if he does that, great. But there is such a disconnect right now between me, the fan, between everyone who follows this team and the inside right now.
So let me ask you this quick. As a fan, as you are, Obviously, you asked for changes. They got Cordero now. Maybe not your choice.
No.
But then now, what other changes are you expecting him to make, like right away, to help?
Well, that's
fix
what I don't
things?
know. He's making all the promises. He made all the promises that fans wanted to hear. They want to hear about, getting rid of pay for play, worrying about league structure, changing all of this stuff. They wanted to hear that. The difference is no one's going to trust him to change anything because he's the same old, same old. That's like saying you're the president of an organization, right?
Yep.
And no one likes you. Let's just say that for the sake of this argument. I'm your vice president because Cordero was Suno Galati, the former president's vice president. So no one likes you. No one likes what you do. And I'm your vice president. I'm learning under you. When it comes to election time, if I got elected, do you think people think anything's going to change?
Nope, because
No.
they're cut from the same cloth. That's
Exactly.
the way they look at it.
That's what I
get
mean.
you.
So it would be unfair for me to say Cordero has no chance to turn this around. He has no chance to fill his promises. That's irresponsible if I would say that. He has, yes. Could he do it? Absolutely. Do I trust him to do it? No.
So then if he doesn't let's say he doesn't, the stuff he's promised, if he doesn't consistently, show some type of movement with this stuff, is it already one of those things where people are going to go against, him and the committee going, why did we vote him in or why did he get voted?
Well, it won't be the committee doing it because the committee doesn't make mistakes, Chris. This, you have to understand, any organization that lacks any transparency at all doesn't care about what the outside people think. And, do I think I will give them this. They made a good choice by not electing Kathy Carter. She was the other establishment candidate. She walked into just about every meeting with MLS Commissioner Don Garber, which I think is important because do we want the MLS Commissioner essentially having a puppet inside the USSF? Right. And I'm not saying she would have, but she's like the CEO or the president already of the marketing arm of the MLS. Is that not in some way like a conflict of interest?
Right. No, I would totally agree with that.
And so all of this stuff combined with the fact that there just is no transparency with this, it's all worrying to me. And do I believe he could do it? Yes. I want to stress that. Actually, no. Could he do it? Yes, he could. Do I believe he will? No. So let me backtrack. Could he do this? Could he actually fulfill his promises? Yes. So could every other politician out there that runs for office. Like, there are certain ones that actually do fulfill their promises, and good on them. But there are other ones that go through a campaign, and afterwards, it's not the same thing.
So basically what you're telling me with Cordero, you're just not getting your hopes up. You're
Absolutely
just kind of
not.
like, oh, it's going to be the same thing what we just went through. And let me ask you this. How long is he president for? Is it
It's 4-year term.
4-year term?
I believe, unless I read that wrong.
Can you get knocked off before your 4-year term or no? Or
I don't believe so.
No?
Galati, I mean, he's been for a decade or so, probably like 12 years, I believe, since 2006, I believe he was in office. And look, I think he made some good strides for this. But if he can only get us this far, if he can only get the Federation this far, and who is it that's going to take that next step? I don't see it as his vice president for the last 6 or 8 years. I don't see it as that guy being the guy that all of a sudden takes us to the promised land. Because like I said to start out this argument, Chris, and this is important, and I want people at home to listen. The United States of America should be challenging for World Cup championships, not World Cup berths, championships. Chris, we're America. When have we ever settled for less than that? When has this country ever settled for less? What are they over in South Korea trying to do right now? Win gold medals. That's what we should be doing with this. And quite frankly, if we're electing people that are not fit for that, then we're going backwards. Then we're wasting our time with this. If this is a business venture where you elect businessmen, to me, to every other fan out there, you're doing a disservice to them. Yeah. And trust me, I hope with all my being that I'm wrong on this. And I would love 3-4 years from now to watch this video and have to eat crow. I mean, I would love to have to do that.
So really, I guess for all of our listeners, in 4 years, 2022, we're going to have a presidential election right here campaign by none other than Jordan King.
Absolutely not. I would not be a good candidate.
No.
Not
Man,
in
for
4
all this
years, I wouldn't.
For all this change you want, heck, I'm just waiting for you to throw your name into the hat. And
Not in 4 years.
Ready to go.
Not in 4 years, sir. No. But again, this is something that I would love to, absolutely love, in 4 years, for you or someone listening right out there now, in 4 years, if they turn this around, share this video with me and tell me how stupid this take was. I would love that. I would love it. And I would tell you, yes, I was stupid. I didn't believe in him when I should have. That's what I'll say to you. I guarantee it. I guarantee you I will say that if someone shares this with me.
To see
and
that.
the USA is currently in the World Cup and competing for a title. All right, well, we got to hit a break. When we come back, Wade Haugen joins the program in studio to talk OSU softball. Plus, stick around to find out what the rest of a successful OSU athletics weekend looked like. You're listening to The Border Battle on OSU Student Radio KXZY.
Hi, I'm Gina Noble, and I'm the mayor of Stillwater, Oklahoma. Stillwater, Oklahoma is anything but still. We are a vibrant community, and we are conveniently located near Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and Wichita, Kansas. We're the home of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and we serve as the cultural, economic, and athletic hub for North Central Oklahoma. In fact, several Quality of Life magazines have recognized Stillwater as one of the nation's 100 top places to live and one of the best places to golf. Established in the land run in 1889, Stillwater is a safe, vibrant community. It boasts a great educational system from K through 12, all the way up to our world-class university, Oklahoma State University. We have an exceptional downtown with a strong entrepreneurial spirit, numerous city parks and trails, and our medical resources are second to none. Stillwater is a wonderful place to begin your career, to start a business, to raise a family, or to retire. We invite you to visit Stillwater because we are anything but still.
Think you're not involved in your community? Think again. Spending your money with local businesses is more than an economic choice. It's a way you can have a say in the look and feel of your hometown. This spring, I invite you to shop in downtown Stillwater. Downtown Stillwater is home to locally owned shops, boutiques, eateries, and dependable professionals that you can trust. Find the perfect gift for your graduate, have a delicious meal with mom, or just stop in to enjoy great spring savings. By creating a demand for local goods and services, you can ensure a place for the local businesses that help give our community character and keep it unique. On behalf of Downtown Stillwater, thank you for shopping local.
Welcome back in here to Studio 318 here in Paul Miller Journalism Building here at Oklahoma State University. You're listening to The Border Battle on OSU Student Radio KXZY. I'm King, he's CJ. Between us, we're joined by Wade Haugen. Wade, thanks for joining us. Covers OSU Cowgirls softball for the Ocali. Opening weekend here out in Tempe, Arizona. They go 4-1 overall, just as an overall question. Impressed with this weekend from the Cowgirls?
Yeah, very much so. 4-1 against pretty good competition. They defeated Arizona Friday night, who's number 7 in the nation. I believe that was the second time under Coach Gajewski that they beat a top 10 team. So that was a big win for them. And then yesterday, I guess, against Western Michigan, they tied a school record with 21 runs. They hit 12 bombs over the 5 games. So the offense was great all weekend. And, anytime you go to a tournament of that nature, to begin the season and go 4-1, you have to be happy with that, especially if you're Coach Gajewski.
Was there any concern after the first game against Oregon State, unranked, but, early in the season, early in the day, 10 a.m. game, any concern after losing that one?
I think, I wasn't there, but I think there probably was some concern, when you lose to Oregon State, who they probably thought they should have beat, and then you have teams left on the schedule throughout the weekend, the caliber of Arizona and teams like that. And I think it showed a lot about the makeup of this team for them to bounce back like they did. starting the season off not how they wanted, dropping that game to Oregon State 8-2, and then you turn around and win 4 in a row. I think that shows a lot about this team and their leadership.
And so obviously we know, with these 5 games they had, Shippy again showing why she was, voted an All-American for this year. Again, second time I believe it was. Is this one of those things that I know with softball it's not so much as how it's more of a team thing than, individual performances, but do you feel Shippy really puts a lot of strain on these opposing, pitchers to try and figure out how to get her out? I mean, in 5 games, she's an 8.46 average, which is amazing in 5 games.
Absolutely. I mean, she goes 11 for 13 on the weekend, 5 walks, 2 bombs, 6 RBIs. I mean, this team's led by her. And, at Media Day, Coach Gajewski, I mean, he just straight up said she's one of, if not the best softball player to ever come through this program. So anytime a coach who throws out, those kind of expectations or, his opinion on that, that's pretty telling of what kind of player she is for this team.
How big was it to get Arizona? That afternoon, you, like we mentioned, lose to Oregon State early in the morning. Just the opportunity, no expectations against Arizona. Probably everyone expects you to lose that one after you lose to Oregon State. How important is it to get that opportunity to just play them and then, no one expects it, but knock them off?
I think it's really important, not just for the win itself. It's early enough now. You can lose that game and be fine. But for the team to know what they can do. Defeating a team the caliber of Arizona this early in the season shows you, I think it gives the team, a sense of what they can really do and that essentially they can beat about anybody, And I think that's important early in the year. Just based off Media Day, Coach Gajewski has high hopes for this team. And I think it was big for them to have the success they did opening weekend just because it reiterated what he said. He said this is their most talented bunch since he's been here. And beating the number 7 team in the nation just confirmed that.
So I want to get back to Shippy just for a second here. She gets on base at an unbelievable clip. And for the rest of the team, it's obviously impressive for her, but how important is it for the rest of the team to, you're going to come up and you're going to have someone on base, if you're hitting behind her, you're going to have these opportunities to drive in runs, which I think every hitter, it's a dream for any hitter to have someone on, ducks on the pond to knock home.
Yeah, it's her getting on base at that clip, especially with the hitters behind her, is so important. Sydney Pennington, she's a freshman. She goes 10 for 20 from the cleanup spot this weekend, and she led the team in RBIs. And a lot of that is because, she came up to the plate with runners on a lot of the time. And, she's another player that Coach Gajewski really talked highly about at Media Day. I mean, it's pretty rare when you have a freshman for a coach to really, talk them up to the media. Usually they're pretty reserved with freshmen, but it's pretty clear that they know what they have in Pennington and they have really high expectations for her. And I think it's pretty clear, too, that she can handle those high expectations because with the way Gajewski talked, putting a freshman at the 4 spot in the lineup right off the bat, that's pretty telling. So, yeah, Shippy getting on base, I think she's a tone setter for this team. It's pretty clear, 11 to 13. I mean, she's obviously very talented, but for her to get on base that much and allow those players behind her to have those RBI opportunities is huge for this offense.
So I want to jump back to the momentum swing. We talked about Oregon State, then you get the opportunity. Now you're at a high, but you still got 3 games out there this weekend. Not to a certain extent Missouri 6-3, but 13-1 and 21-5. Not just playing well, dominating performances for the rest of the weekend for the Cowgirls.
Yeah, and it's hard. You beat a team like Arizona, you could very easily have a letdown after that. You could very easily, those girls could have said, you know what, we've accomplished what we needed to in this classic or tournament, whatever you want to call it. We beat, a high-ranked team. That's all we really needed to do out here. But, yeah, like you said, I mean, they just got stronger after the Arizona game. And, this team's a veteran team. They returned 7 of 9 of their starters from last year, 5 of their top 6 hitters, and all 5 of those girls hit 300 last year. So I think really their performance this weekend just shows how experienced this group is and the potential that they have.
So then, do you feel as as the season's going along, obviously they've had the last two games, 13, 21 runs scored. Is this going to be a team that's known for hitting homers, power, and knocking in runs? Is this going to be one of those things? If you want to keep up with them, you got to score runs against them, or is this team going to be like that grinded out style, that can win by 1-0 game?
I think offense is going to be a strength of this team. Now, that's nothing against the pitching staff. The pitching staff is led by 2 transfers, actually, that pitched well over the weekend. And then you have Logan Simonek. She's returning. Whitney Whitehorn, she pitched well this weekend as well. So, the pitching staff is solid for this team. And Coach Gajewski talked about how how many different looks this pitching staff has. You have, your spot-up pitchers, your power pitchers. He mentioned a few pitchers that the girls on the team just don't like facing in practice. And so I think that's going to also be a strength, is just how different these pitchers are and the different looks that they give opposing teams. But I think when you return that much offense from a team that was good offensively as it was, I think definitely that's going to be a strength of this team. And if you're going to want to beat this team, just like Oregon State, they scored 8 runs. You're going to have to score quite a few runs to beat this team most days. With softball and baseball, there's days where the bats just aren't going to be there, and you're going to have to grind out a close game. And I think they can do that when they need to. But overall, I think that the offense is going to be a strength of this team.
Now, in staying with the pitching staff theme, when you have an offense like that, does it give you a little more, can you be a little more relaxed out on the mound knowing you're going to get the run support? That's never going to be a concern with this team, unless, of course, you have those days where the bats go cold. But on those days, this pitching staff's probably going to be excited to step up and show, look, if the bats go cold, we can still carry this team. Is that a mindset for a team when you have such a great offense that, I don't need to bring it every day, but there are going to be the days where I need my best stuff?
Yeah, I think, as a pitcher, anytime you go into a game, your mindset's going to be the same. You're going to want to get outs and not give up runs. But when you have an offense like this, it can only help. It's not going to hurt that your offense can put up a lot of runs. Those pitchers are going to go out and compete, I would think, like they would anytime, whether their offense is scoring or not. But it definitely does take some pressure off of you as a pitcher whenever you know that any inning, pretty much, this offense can go off. Against Western Michigan, they had an inning where they scored 8 runs and an inning where they scored 9 runs. So that's pretty rare in an offense. So I think that can only help the pitching staff.
Overall, what is the dynamic of this team as far as like an offensive style, would you say?
I would say, based off the first weekend, the long ball is definitely always in play with this team. 12 bombs in 5 games, that's a lot. You got Vanessa Shippey, Sydney Pennington, Maddie Sue Montgomery had a couple home runs, if I remember right. And that's not even to name all of them. There's a lot of girls that hit home runs. So I think with this team, they're solid hitting all around, but they're definitely going to be a team that's going to hit some home runs, which, is good for an offense.
So then, obviously, with the Michelle Smith Pediatric Cancer Foundation Invitational coming up this coming weekend in Clearwater, Florida, is, obviously Missouri's going to be there again. Is that going to be one of those games where maybe you see it come down to the wire, being now, both teams will have seen each other in a week's span? Is it one of those things now those teams will have to dive in more of, okay, what are weaknesses? What are strengths? What do we really need to do to make sure we come out with this victory?
Yeah, I think that game will be interesting. I think anytime you've played somebody, you know what they have. And so, I think the result, not necessarily who wins or loses, but the type of game that game is maybe a little different than what it was out at Tempe, just because, Missouri may counter with a different style of pitcher or something of that nature to try to do something different against Oklahoma State. And, whether that matters or not in the end result, we don't know yet. But I think that definitely could be an interesting game to watch. And Tennessee, they start out against Tennessee, who's number 11 in the nation, I believe. So, right off the bat, they're going to be tested in that one.
Overall, how hard is it for this team with all the noise that gets made down I-35 down in Norman? Is that difficult for this team, or do you think this is a group that's going to be able to shut that out and take it game by game and not think about what their arch rivals are doing?
I think it's definitely tough. I mean, you're dealing with right now, the premier softball program in the nation in Oklahoma. But at the same time, OSU's on the rise. And that, Coach Gajewski mentioned that at Media Day. And one of the comments he made was that about recruiting is how since they've gotten here, they've really made it an effort of theirs to attack the in-state recruits and get them to, he said, it's not a free-for-all anymore as far as everybody comes in and gets Oklahoma recruits. They know that they have to, deal with Oklahoma State now. And he made the comment that they're, getting girls who have worn red their whole life and flipping them to orange. And so, while, yes, I think it's a challenge, at the same time, I think with the momentum that they have right now, they're in as good of a spot as far as against Oklahoma as they've been in a long time. And so that's definitely going to be an exciting series to watch this year. It's towards the end of the year, so it's quite a ways down the road. But I think that while, yes, it's a challenge, at the same time, OSU is definitely on the right track and in as good of a spot as they've been in a long time.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep the softball in our sights. As I said Friday, people, you can't be sleeping on these spring sports because as we've seen this opening weekend, OSU softball certainly one that can make a difference. Well, Wade, thank you so much for joining us. Again, Wade Haugen, Ocala softball beat writer. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take you through the rest of the weekend for Cowboy and Cowgirl athletics. CJ and I will let you know who our players of the week were. So stick around. We'll be right back. This is OSU Student Radio on KXZY.
What is arts and sciences?
We aren't all about the arts.
We like to think of ourselves as explorers.
From exploring the human mind
to discerning the building blocks of the universe.
We don't just read books.
We don't just sit in the classroom.
And we don't just solve problems.
We seek to give everyone a voice.
In a variety of approaches.
We tackle the big issues.
By understanding complex social structures.
And even understand the small ones.
We take passions to new heights.
But stay grounded.
We tell stories.
Of the past. Of the present.
And work to predict the future.
We like to think with a little preparation. Some dirt under the fingernails.
And some self-analysis. You can do anything.
With nearly 100 degree plans to choose from.
Where will your arts and science degree take you?
Connect, achieve, succeed.
To our neighbors and friends, we come to you today to let you know what's on our hearts. Because you're the reason what we do is so much more meaningful than a job. The reason we believe in the power of investing in tomorrow and the power of community. So this is simply thank you. As we step boldly into a time of growth and change, consider this our promise that every investment in our hospital is an investment in our communities.
This spring, I invite you to shop in downtown Stillwater. Downtown Stillwater is home to locally owned shops, boutiques, eateries, and dependable professionals that you can trust. Find the perfect gift for your graduate, have a delicious meal with mom, or just stop in to enjoy great spring savings. By creating a demand for local goods and services, you can ensure a place for the local businesses that help give our community character and keep it unique. On behalf of downtown Stillwater, thank you for shopping local.
Welcome back into Studio 318 here in Paul Miller Journalism Building at Oklahoma State University. You're listening to The Border Battle on OSU Student Radio KXZY. I'm King, he's Notch. Chris, we're watching some highlights here. A Bedlam victory. It was a Bedlam weekend, folks. Although I'm sure this is the one winter sport that doesn't get forgotten around here. They win against OU 31-6, 34-6 against Edinboro on Friday. So a good weekend for wrestling. I'm going to take you through the scores from the rest of the spring ones. I didn't get to see the actual results from the cross country, though I'm sure they did well. Like we said Friday, successful program there as well. Men's tennis 4-2 over Northwestern on Friday. They went 0-4, got swept by number 1 Wake Forest on Sunday, but, that's nothing to scoff at. I mean, Wake Forest is a pretty incredible program, having a great year, obviously, this year. Women's golf, 17th, so not the greatest weekend for them, but they got their season underway now. Women's basketball, 81-73 win at Iowa State. We were listening to that broadcast, Chris, here. Had to withstand quite a comeback there. And then, obviously, the big marquee one was men's basketball, 85-88 win at West Virginia. Chris, women's basketball, men's basketball, interesting games here because men's basketball kind of came back, had to come back in the second half, though not from 20 points down like Iowa State women's had to do. And then the women, on the flip side, had to hold off a comeback. Both impressive victories. Which one, again, I guess, was more crucial?
I obviously, we know the men's against West Virginia was crucial. Just to help.
Don't overthink this, Chris.
No, I'm going to say it's the women's.
Really?
And I'm going to say this because they almost did let Iowa State do the same thing like they did here in Stillwater when, Oklahoma State was up by 10 at the half. Iowa State came back, beat them by, I think it was 8 or 9. Now, you were up by 26 at one point in the first half against the Cyclones, and they get all the way down to single digits, and then you only end up winning by 8. Like, I think that's a big thing to be able to come up with that victory because that can sit in your mental state for a long time if you give up that big of a lead.
Yeah, by the way, and I obviously think the men's basketball one a little bit more important because I think the women have the NCAA tournament. I mean, unless some colossal collapse, I think they have the NCAA tournament locked up. It's just a matter of seeding, and at the end of the day, can they really compete with UConn? We can have that discussion later down the road. From a men's side, though, this was a game that we circled on Friday as a game that they probably needed to win to really have, get back on track their hopes for a tournament run, and they played awesome in that second half. Down the stretch, something I found interesting, if you go back and watch the highlights on the Big 12's YouTube page, don't do that right now. Keep it here at Border Battle. But if you go watch those highlights, they show a Jeffrey Carroll 3 in the second half, and it makes me angry because what they don't show is to start that break was a Mitchell Solomon dive on the floor again. Right. It was him and Javon Carter. Both of them dove on the floor. Solomon was able to get it, and it's a senior play that, again, makes a difference in a game for him. So I think that they don't show that, but it was as important to play as anything, as far as I'm concerned, in that game. And, again, gets them back on track. But for women's, you mentioned how that could sit, in the back of their minds. That's a bad taste in their mouth if they lose that. They needed to win it. Now it's a 3-game winning streak. You got Baylor coming in, Texas coming in this week, both home games. You got a chance here to put some pressure on Baylor and Texas at the top of the Big 12 standings. And if you can do that somehow, all of a sudden, you're looking at a real nice seed in the NCAA tournament.
Right. And I don't want to be negative. I know they were up against Baylor and they had the chance to actually win that game. But I'm actually more excited probably for the Texas game because they only lost by 3 to them when Texas was here in Stillwater. I think it's maybe more suitable matchup. I think Baylor is Baylor's a great team. Not that the Cowgirls aren't. I don't want to sound like I'm not a fan of the Cowgirls, but to me the more exciting game for me is going to be the Texas game.
They were at Texas, by the way, last time. They're home.
Oh, was
this
that
time.
okay? Yeah. My bad.
Yeah. Well, I would hope so, Chris. I believe we're probably going to try to call that game, so I hope we weren't planning to drive to Austin for that.
Oh, hey, road
but
trip,
anyways,
why not?
No, I'm just giving you a hard. I'm giving you a hard time. I do think Baylor's winnable though at GIA. You get enough people in that building, that place gets loud.
You said it key though. If they can
get out there, get to GIA this week. This is an important game tomorrow. Get out there and, like I said, you put pressure on Baylor and Texas here. All of a sudden, you go into the Big 12 tournament thinking you can win the darn thing, right. and if you do, all of a sudden you're probably a top 4 seed. Top 3 seed if you do that. So I think that's important. Chris, let's take a look at our players of the week. Mm-hmm. So let's start with you.
Okay.
You had Vanessa Shippey and Cam McGriff this weekend. Tell us why.
I have Shippey up there just because she led the way. She's showing again, why she deserves the credit, why she's the leader of that team. And then she adds another record, to her name as now the career walks leader at 125 now. Yeah, since it keeps adding on. So I think she deserves that for, especially for this weekend, for how well the team did as a whole. And then Cameron Griff, I mean, besides the Baylor game where he didn't really have much to do, or stat wise, I guess. But when you can go 13 for 13 from the line, 20 points against West Virginia, you put up 20 against Kansas as well. Both of them, one's in Morgantown, the other one's at Fog Allen Field. I mean, I just he's come out of the woodwork to me. He's had these 2 big games against 2 ranked teams, and he's made a difference.
Yeah, I like both those picks. I think I would say Kendall Smith made a few more plays than McGriff, but again, score 20 points at West Virginia is not easy to do. I went Kaylee Jensen and Lindy Waters. Obviously, Kaylee Jensen, it's not just that she had a career high and an already incredible career. It's that in the second half, as we talked about previously, they were in trouble at times. Iowa State was hitting every 3 that they took, and when OSU needed a basket, they went down to Kaylee Jensen. She'd get fouled, she'd put it in, and she'd get a 3 at the line. And when things weren't quite working for Braxton Miller, the shots weren't falling until the end, and Lauren Goodwin was struggling to a certain extent, although no turnovers again. I think that's important for her. But when things were stagnant on offense, where did they go? They went back to Kaylee Jensen, and the offense will always run through her. It's just the way it is. And is Goodwin important, getting into the paint and collapsing for kick-out shots to Hobbs and Castro and people like that, Miller? Yeah, that's important. But when they need buckets, when it's 100% imperative they get a basket, who do they go to? Kaylee Jensen. And
she scored 16 points in the fourth quarter alone.
Yeah. She's, like I said, it was just like OSU couldn't stop Iowa State from making threes. Iowa State, there was no chance stopping Kaylee Jensen when she got down as low as she was getting. And then Lindy Waters, the reason I pick him is because he could have been the player of the game after OU. He could have been the player of the game after Kansas, and he was my player of the game after West Virginia. And I don't just say that because he made the game-winning 3, but you look against Oklahoma and against Kansas, who hit big shots in both those games? It was Kendall Smith and Lindy Waters. It wasn't necessarily Jeff Carroll. Yes, he played well in all of those games. But when we needed a bucket, when Oklahoma State needed that 3 to get him back into it, who was it? It was Kendall Smith against OU, and Lindy Waters hit several against Kansas, and then obviously hit a couple down the stretch, including the game winner against West Virginia.
And I would definitely say, too, with Lindy Waters, I feel like he's starting to come into his own. As the seasons progress, he's matured more. It's almost like he's really finding out what works for him. He's just becoming a more solid ball player all around.
Yeah, and by the way, something that I don't think should get overlooked, but I think a lot of people are overlooking, is at the end of that game, after Carroll dunked it, it was 2 guys. It was Carroll and I forget who else underneath the basket, like screaming and yelling. And good for them. Who are the 2 people that kept playing? Lindy Waters and Mitchell Solomon contested that Javon Carter 3. By the way, folks, if that goes in, they're going to overtime. So all of this, you could start running off the court. Solomon, Waters. They realized 2 seconds left on the clock. I better play some defense here. Both got a hand in the face of Javon Carter, misses it, and then you can start to celebrate.
Right. Well, and like you said, it's a good thing they did because they threw the out-of-bounds pass 3 quarters down the court.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was a heave.
Yeah, and it wasn't that the 2 OSU, like you said, Carroll and I think it was Smith, that it's not like they were guarding the inbounds pass. They were just, like you said, celebrating. So the guy had a wide open lane just to throw it. And like you said, you have your senior, and then you have sophomore doing it.
The 3 guys so far this season that I've been impressed with that I think personify what Mike Boynton is, like what team he wants, who he wants on his team. 3 people: Mitchell Solomon. He always plays hard, great defender. Plays, he's not the most athletic person. He's not the most skilled player, but he's always in the right place at the right time, and he does the basics well. Lindy Waters, great defender. Brandon Averette, great defender. That's what Mike Boynton wants to build his team around. Is it any wonder? Some people say, why would Brandon Averette have ever piqued Mike Boynton's interest? That's why.
Right.
He plays hard. He takes care of the ball, and he plays solid defense. Great defense. So that's why he ends up being a player that Mike Boynton wants.
Right. Yeah. I think the only downfall, some people think it's a good thing, is like with Brandon, it's nice that he doesn't always look for his shot. He definitely likes to get his teammates involved, but sometimes you have to, think too, okay, sometimes you have to be the guy that calls your own number sometimes, which, and there's still time left. He's only a sophomore, I believe, so we have some time.
Yeah, and that's the difference between he and Kendall Smith. Kendall Smith, a grad transfer, has all this experience. He knew that, there was a time against West Virginia. It wasn't a rhythm three. It wasn't a catch and shoot three. It was I dribbled. Am I really in rhythm? No, but I realized the best shot we're going to get with what's on the shot clock right now is a three-pointer by me.
Yep.
And I think to your point, yes, you do have to develop into that to know when and when not to take the shot. And I think Kendall Smith is a guy who's great at it, and Brandon Averett is a guy that's probably going to continue to learn that. And I think Lindy Waters is also a guy who realizes, am I a dribble and spot-up shooter? Probably not. If I catch it in rhythm, and can I shoot it then? Absolutely. He's a great shooter. So I think all of that combined, you're starting to see a team that is starting to form a more clear identity. By the way, Brandon, I do want to mention this. Brian Troll on the program Friday, he said 9 threes and 10 threes against Kansas and OU. 10 threes this weekend against West Virginia. So that, whatever it is, we got to change the rims. I don't know what it is at GIA, but we got to start getting some more threes at home for Oklahoma State. Once all that starts to happen, hey, this is a tournament team.
Yeah, and all the foul calls, again, like I pointed out, they had, and I know you laugh at it, but 48 fouls in Morgantown. I mean,
difficult one.
Like, wow.
Javon Carter should have been fouled out of that game. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So that's the way it goes. Well, thanks for joining us. We got to get out of here. Join us again, same time on Wednesday. It's a big week for Cowgirl basketball, as we mentioned. We'll keep you up to date with all the reaction right here on the Border Battle. For CJ, for the great crew we have around here in Studio 318, I'm King. Thanks so much for watching and listening to the Border Battle on OSU Student Radio, KXZY.